So, without further ado, help me give a nice round of applause for the
Yes.
director.
Better to do today than be having a lot of fun someplace. But the idea is that if you're involved in the spreading of the message of liberty, you have to have some fun doing it. So. My wife snuck in here. Did anybody see her? And thank you very much for the invitation. And I guess you heard what was going on in Nevada. Did you hear what the real story was? You know, the feds had to leave. They backed down. They left. Yes, they heard YAL was going to Nevada. Message of liberty, and the feds have to back down. But you know, there is a pretty good lesson about exactly what was happening down there. It's a good. You can study property rights. You can study the relationship of states to the government, and you can study and understand the benefits of the people speaking out. And I think what you're witnessing and participating in right now is a transition where the people are waking up. They're sick and tired of the federal government. They're not going to get around anymore. So in the last year or two, it has been proven that nullification is alive and well. The drug laws, there's still a lot of federal drug laws, but now there are a lot of state laws defying the federal government. The federal government's going to have to back down because the drug war made no sense, wasted a lot of money, punished people unmercifully, and it's time to end the drug war. And right now, the state, the government, the federal government has to back off because the states have been passing these laws, and we have to continue that momentum, and that's the way it should be. The states should be writing the law, and we shouldn't have a national police force enforcing anything along those lines. Say they like to take care of them. And they overstep their bounds now and then. But they move in and they build big buildings and they have to have big computers and they have to use up a lot of water, electricity. Guess what? Some of those buildings are going up. The local people are saying no more water, no more electricity. Why don't you just go home? This episode in Nevada is an interesting thing because, first off, we're talking about federal land. In the Libertarian Society that I work hard for, and it's very much related to our Constitution, which a lot of people have forgotten. But the purpose in a free society is for the people to own the land and not the government. Now, you happen to be in a state right now that is a pretty good example of the people owning the land. You know, they say that in the western states, they came into the nation a different way, and the people wouldn't take care of the land. We have to make sure they take care of the natural resources. And you take a state like Nevada and the other western states, they might have 70, 80, 90% of the land owned by the federal government. Well, if we really had a true republic and a limited government republic where local people own it, it would be more like Texas. Texas went into the Union, with mostly private property, very little federal land, and the feds, of course, are creeping in. But that would have prevented all these problems. We do know that when governments own something, it's impossible to manage. We could say, well, it's just the management. The Bureau of Land Management, we just need some new people. They don't know how to manage the land. No, they can't. It's impossible. Because when everybody owns the land, nobody owns the land. And then what does it do? It invites problems. It invites problems by the politician. It invites problems of either special interest. It invites problems from the managers. And this problem has been brewing for a long time, and it finally broke out. But at least the federal government, one rule of the federal government, one thing they're supposed to follow is one responsibility that all governments have is to enforce contracts. You know, if you're going to have a free society, you want voluntary transactions, and one role that could be played in the courts would be that if you break your contract, you have to have an arbitrator. And yet today, you live and you're inheriting a mess where the government's main job, so to speak, of what they're doing, they're spending all the time breaking the rules and breaking the regulations and breaking the contract. They're supposed to be punishing counterfeiting. Yeah, they're the biggest counterfeiters in the world. So we are seeing, change. The people are rebelling against this. They're speaking out, and the states are talking on, trying to get some of their powers back again. It's very, very healthy. I think that one of the best statistics now is that a large majority of American people don't believe the federal government when they tell us anything. That's a good start. Out a lot of information. They have the bully pulpit, and they think they know everything, and that you don't even have the right to know things. So they lie about economic statistics. Have you ever noticed, even in your lifetime, that they lie about foreign policy? And if you're old enough to remember not too long ago, how many lies were told to beat the war drums to get this country to endorse going to the ridiculous, unconstitutional, nonsensical, unwinnable wars in the Middle East, Iraq, and Afghanistan, and Libya, and Egypt, and Syria, and on and on. And now all these people, all these failures, and they want to have a war with Russia. I would say we need a war with Washington, D.C., and we need they seem to be overwhelming, and at times I think they seem to be overwhelming, but I don't get overwhelmed with it totally because I think as complex as they are and as bad as they are, the solutions aren't complex. And when the people wake up, the answers are going to be there and they're available to us. Just like we're weaning ourselves off the drug war and these other things and going after NSA and now challenging the management of public lands. So I think this is all very, very good that they're doing this. Because if we don't do this, of course, they're going to continue to expand it, and that's where our liberties are violated. Every time the government decides, they know what's best for you in your social life, they know what's best for your economic life, know how you're supposed to spend your money, and know what's best for the world and the peace of the world, and they're arrogant about it. They don't know, because people should be making these decisions. A lot of people can understand why we should have personal, social liberties, make up your own minds about your friendships and all the things that you do as long as you don't hurt people. But then they have no understanding that that's the way it should be in economics. It's your money. Why don't you work hard and get the government out of the way, and then you're allowed to keep it, then you'd have a lot of production. But no, there's some people who think, no, it would be unfair that some people have more than others. Yeah, like we haven't been following the rules of the marketplace, and what kind of a system do we have today? We have a much greater distortion of wealth under the system we have today. It's not socialism, but under socialism there's a distortion of wealth, and it's designed, to make sure everybody's equal. But there's always a distortion of wealth under authoritarian governments, and we have it today. So we have Wall Street and others who are always being taken care of. They make money in the good times, and then they get the bailouts, and then the middle class gets the high prices. They lose their jobs and they lose their houses. So there's a lot of problems built in there. But the big thing is those who want to demagogue it will go and say, well, it's unfair. Well, we have this free enterprise system, and it's so unfair because the rich are getting richer. But it isn't free enterprise that's doing this. So when we criticize, the wealthy, we have to distinguish. Now, the far left, the progressives, who are very willing to deliver and to criticize those individuals with wealth, and they want themselves to redistribute the wealth. Of course, they never want to redistribute their personal wealth. So we have to distinguish between those who are wealthy because they are able to manipulate government, get benefits from government, be in the military-industrial complex or some national security firm. They get all the funding from the government. And that is a system that should be criticized. That is not earned wealth. But if somebody in a free system earns wealth by the consumer making the decision and saying, well, we're going to buy this product. We like this telephone or we like this computer, and the company never cheated, and even in spite of inflation, drive prices down, and consumers like it. The consumers get to vote. This is the only real democracy that we should be arguing for. Remember that in a free market system, the consumer really is the king. It isn't designed to protect the businessman. He's designed and he's permitted to strive and earn the best he can. He just is not allowed to steal and defraud or break his contract. And then he makes money. We have to restrain ourselves because everybody has it. There's a little bit of greed, a little bit of envy. Why do they have so much? But draw the line. If they have so much because they stole it from you, then you have a right to complain. If they got it there because of taxation and they're on the receiving end of some taxes or on the receiving end of the benefits of a very malicious monetary system like the Federal Reserve, then we have a right. But we shouldn't condemn all wealth. And this is why sometimes on the academic issues, we can appeal and work with progressives quite well on civil liberties and maybe foreign policies at times, because sometimes you're about as hypocritical as anybody else, what they say. But we should, it's one area where progressives would say that all wealth has to be done fair, redistributed fairly. But it's this whole notion that there's certain people who are arrogant enough to believe that they know what is best for somebody else. Well, first off, they can't know. The second thing is they may make some mistakes. And the third thing is, if you make a mistake and you have your liberty and you mess up your life, you have no right to go to anybody else and demand to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Those who disapprove have no right to come and take what you work hard for and earn, which means very simply, we know our tax code would be rather simple. We repeal the 17th Amendment and move the IRS out for good. In the open, the evidence is there that the IRS is a political tool. Like it's something new, I think that was happening back in Nixon's day. It's been done all the time, but it's out in the open. We know they do it. Matter of fact, one of our organizations, very closely related to YNL, is our Campaign for Liberty. They're hounding us, sending us huge bills. Oh, it's just a coincidence. It has nothing to do with the IRS going and looking, trying to get some of us. But that is a big issue. People who, it's sort of like crooked policemen. And these are crooked government agents who will use the authoritarianism of an IRS and a tax agency to come in and punish the people who offer a different solution. Government should be there for a very limited purpose. The purpose of government, from my viewpoint, is designed to protect your liberty. Woo! You can protect liberty without protecting property, because liberty is your life, and what you do with your energies and what you produce should be your own. So it's life and liberty, and the government should be protecting that. Contracts should be honored, and we should have a sound, honest currency and no defrauding. And that is it. Of course, in national defense, the government has, under our Constitution and under the system today, it would be very logical for us to have a national defense. But I don't like our government to spend most of their money on national offense, doing things they shouldn't be doing. Has been the problem, especially in my lifetime, because I remember the World War II. That was at least declared war, and it was defensive, and it was a real threat. And it ended in, 3 years. It was a short war, considering the magnitude of it all. But then trouble started after that. Then it was Korea, then it was Vietnam, and then dozens and dozens of little wars going on. And then since this century turned, we have perpetual war against terrorism, which means that we have assumed the role of the world policeman, that we go into any country we want, arrest anybody we want, haul off to secret prisons, and they still defend the principle, quietly so, of torture. And it should wake the American people up that we have gone through this. If we are getting a little more information now, it just came out, the CIA. I hope we get the report, but I won't believe that we have it until it actually comes out. But a lot of the stuff is leaked out on the CIA report that they knew about the torture. And guess what? They're shocked. They're surprised. Torture doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It only destroys the people who do the torturing. And that is the reason. But we do things worse than torture, if you can conceive of anything worse. The one criminal colleague, who's obviously a bad guy, who looks to everybody, they never got an ounce of information from him. They never got any information to help catch bin Laden like they had trained all of them. But they waterboarded Khalid 385 times. It was just unbelievable. Can you imagine what it would be like to have any one of you torture anybody one time and just have to watch it? So you have to really destroy the soul of the torturer. If we're not careful, we're going to destroy the soul of this country because we allow this to go on, and it may still well be going on. So you say, oh no, they quit this torture, they're not doing it, they learned their lesson. Yeah, has Obama sworn off the use of drones to murder people around the world because he thinks they're a benefit? Has he sworn off using drones to assassinate American citizens? No, it's out in the open. Our country's been doing that off and on for years. It's just part of how governments operate. But at least before, they used to think it was so bad, they didn't want the people to know. Now it's announced. It's no big secret. And they say, what about how about due process? What about a person? How can you declare this guy, an evil monster, we have to kill him, and we'll assassinate him? Well, the president and over say, well, we get together and we talk about it and we discuss it and make a decision. If he's a bad guy, we do it. That's what they think of what the due process is. So we have the evidence, and you as a generation, you're inheriting this thing. You have a big job. But the biggest thing is moving in our directions. People are waking up. And there is a resistance to this. So whether it's the torturers or the people who use drones, going to war unconstitutionally, interfering in our personal lives and trying to teach us how to be better people by changing our habits, all these things are a violation. And of course, the biggest mockery is our government that pretends to be free enterprisers. We have Republicans, we're the free enterprisers. But what happens when you get the Republicans in charge? Do they balance the budget? No, they don't balance the budget. I mean, just recently, they did some medical things on the House floor. They snuck the thing in unanimous consent and had the doc fix done that way, and also changed some IRS thing. And when Republicans had charge of the House and the Senate and the presidency, the budgets skyrocketed. And but maybe they were okay on education because remember Ronald Reagan said we should get rid of the Department of Education, which I fully agree with. That's what we should do with the Department of Education. But when we finally had a chance, they gave us no child left behind. There's a lot of concern by Republicans and conservatives right now about Common Core. They ought to be, but are you convinced that when they get there, and they get a chance, will they really change it? No, it's been expanding under Republicans or Democrats. It's a system that has been ingrained with people. Medical care. What's the proper position of the federal government's role in medical care? Would you accept the notion that there's not 1 ounce of evidence in the Constitution that the federal government should be involved in the delivery of medical care?
Yeah.
The country came to a decision and thought, well, it sounds like a pretty good idea. We should amend the Constitution. Back in the old days, back in the teens, when they thought, well, drinking alcohol was certainly serious, but I know you won't identify with this because nobody in this audience drinks alcohol. and nobody in Washington drinks alcohol, let me tell you. But at one time they thought, well, we'll just prohibit the drinking of alcohol. Of course, they thought about that and they said, yes, that sounds like a good idea. So they amended the Constitution. Can you believe that? That is so astounding. And then it didn't work out. They repealed prohibition. But did they do that through war on drugs? Did they do this for taking over education and total taking over of medical care? So we have Obamacare. It's outrageous that we go to the Supreme Court. It's the Supreme Court with conservative justices. We have the Chief Justice, who's the conservative leader. He said, oh no, this is a very good idea. But if we call this a tax instead of a penalty, then it's legal. And the Supreme Court. So the challenge I'm making is you're in a special group. A special group because you're interested in liberty, you're interested in understanding this, but you're interested in doing something about it. But I warn you, once you find out what's wrong, and once you find out it's not complicated, and once you find out that it's in America's traditions and our Constitution, that, we just had a few more people obeying the Constitution, and we go a long way in solving most of our problems. But the burden will be on you, and the one thing I do at most of my talks is I place a burden of responsibility on you because you're unique, you're different, and we know it has to be done, and there's no way you should be comfortable for the rest of your life not thinking about this and studying every day and finding out what you can do about it. 1-on-1, 2-on-2, or boldly enough, join YAL at this point in your life. People, especially young people, say, no, I don't think you're right, we need to do something. Tell me what I have to do. And of course, what I tell them, I just say, do whatever you want to do. Whatever you can do, whatever you think of, whatever you're comfortable with. But the most important thing to start with is self-education. Because generally speaking, even back when schools weren't nearly as complicated and poor as they are today, I never was exposed to this, and then I had an inquisitive mind. I started looking, and I came across in the 60s about Austrian economics, and wow, these Austrian economists agree with me. But it was so delightful to find out that there was somebody else a lot smarter than knew economics and could write this. So when I had to search this out, the Foundation for Foundation for Economic Education, the Leonard Read Group, Larry Read's group. That was the only thing that I could find, and I found the books and things, no internet, no college professors, no government official had the biggest notion about this. Today, you have no excuse. You have no excuse whatsoever for not finding anything you want at the tip of your hands. And then, it's up to you to figure out what to do. What can you do? Well, you might be creative. You might invent a Bitcoin for freedom or something like that. Understanding the issue and then learning how to present the case, because believe me, you probably have already been beaten up by the opposition for saying you don't care about people, you're heartless, you don't want to have strong defense, and they go on and on. But you have to be able to refute what they say, because the biggest charge is that we have no compassion for people. Sure, the socialists have a tremendous amount of compassion. They wanted to have houses for everybody, and they would be free, and even have affirmative action with the Reinvestment Act and printing all that money. And who made the money? It was the brokers and the salesmen and the mortgage people, and they made billions, and they went broke. And they got bailed out, you know. So where's the compassion? But we don't care because we want a market that works and is honest, and there are incentives, and liberties are protected, property is protected, and our contracts are protected. One of the worst things going on with medical care is how, once again, big government in bed with big business. This is in the military industrial complex. You have the insurance companies and the drug companies. They're the ones who really run the show. Every bit as much as Democrats as Republicans. But today, you know, today still it's probably possible, and somebody's an expert in insurance, I don't think it's changed. If you're young and you want a life insurance policy, you can go out and price it down. You're 20 years old. But when you're 40, they don't kick you off. They're not allowed to do that. The contract gives you life insurance. If you get sick, they don't kick you off. Medical insurance should be that way too. It should be one-on-one. Get involved, and the tax code compels the medical care to be delivered through big business, big labor unions, and everybody seems to benefit, and the individual, the small businessman can't qualify and get the same benefits. You can't transfer your policies. The government has to write regulations, and then they put mandates on and dictates and force the insurance companies, and then when they force the insurance company to insure everything and anything, they go broke, and then the insurance companies say, well, we can't afford it. Well, cancel the policies. The government does exactly the opposite. So they go in and they either double your fees or cancel your policies. And then you're forced into the government system. We have to be convinced when you present this case is that no matter how much they claim that they are the humanitarians, they're wrong. Because they can't do it. They makes things worse. And they're a bunch of demagogues to claim they do it. They do it just for the votes or protecting the special interests by taking care of those who do all the lobbying. Yeah. That is the effort. I mean, I'm sure some of you already know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a serious problem. But you have to, I got interested probably in the early 60s and started reading. But by 1974, I thought, oh, you know, I put the pressure on myself. Well, I think that our country's going in the wrong direction. I was practicing medicine. I love medicine. I didn't want to leave. Had no intention of leaving medicine. So I went to go Carol. I said, you know, we were having a major crisis. Bretton Woods broke down. Inflation was 15%. Interest rates, you know, 21%. And I said, you know, I'm going to run for Congress. And she said, what in the world? I said, what's the matter with it? I just want to speak out. She says, it's so dangerous. And I thought maybe she was worried about the conspiracy or something like that. She says, you could get elected here. She didn't know anything about politics, and I said, nobody's going to elect a guy like me. Because I'm not going to come to the college students and say, vote for me, I'm going to get you free education, you know, this stuff. And I'm not going to come to get rid of the political Santa Claus. And she said, no, her estimation is something that I thought about for a long time because it's something people come back and tell me. They said, you know, they might disagree or think it's overwhelming. They say, what we really like is you telling the truth. And that is what she said. She says, they're going to know that you're telling the truth, and they're going to elect you. And I really wasn't looking for a political career. I was there for 4 terms. I said, go back to medicine because just staying there and working up the ladder and then I just have to join that gang in order to do anything.
I voted for you.
And then ran again in 96. And been around a bit, but you know what? It's actually a lot of fun now. I don't have to go back and on John Boehner's schedule. But I'm having fun doing what I want to do because I come to get to visit with you because you actually applaud this one. I gave a lot of speeches from this one. Now I'm at home and I try to do my best to encourage YAL since that Jeff Tracy guy, just wait on baby, he's not here today. But Jeff, of course, worked in my congressional office early on and met Amanda in our office, and then he worked in the presidential campaign, and this came out of the presidential campaign when we started the Campaign for Liberty. But I think this is a great organization. I keep working with it. I encourage you to work hard with it. We have an organization which is one that tries to influence Washington. It is the organization that was very instrumental in stirring up the grassroots to support auto defense bill, and we were able to get that passed twice on the House floor with all Republicans and a bunch of Democrats. So it does work. Grassroots efforts does work and help. So that continues, but we have a channel called the Ron Paul channel, which is working hard to get a message out. The message, guess what the message is all about? It's just a perfect bunch of it. Getting the message out is getting people on there that need some exposure. But I think education is very important. The Free Foundation for Rational Economics and Education, something I've had since 1976. But its goal right now is directed toward foreign policy. Daniel McAdam, who was with me for 10, 12 years in Washington and did the research for me on foreign policy, very, very good. And he came with this idea, and I was delighted to have it. He has this Institute for Peace and Prosperity with the Free Foundation. This was very, very well. So if you're particularly interested in foreign policy, you should go to the Ron Paul Institute. .org, I believe it is, but you can find it. But I think that is very important because guess what? There's very, very few people getting any attention, taking any different position on foreign policy other than beating the drums for more war. And you need some proponents and spokesmen who are saying, how about a constitutional policy? Don't go to war unless there's a declaration of war.
Yeah!
There's one other little thing I started. I hope it becomes a big thing, and that's in education. That has to do with the Ron Paul curriculum, where there are more and more people who are getting a bit annoyed with Common Core and all these other things going on. Occasionally, you hear stories about violence in schools, and so this is designed very specifically, not for everybody. It's a homeschooling program, but it's designed to promote the freedom philosophy. And a perspective on history that is different, certainly a perspective on economics different than Keynesianism, and Gary North and Tom Woods are organizing that for me, and we're making great progress. But it's not designed. There'll be religion will be taught in history. What churches did and what their things and the importance of history as objectively as possible, but it's not a religious course. It's not religious fundamentalism, and it's not anything like that. So that is available, but that is the long term, but it's coming, and there's a lot of that going on now, but it really, somebody said, well, is everybody supposed to take your curriculum? No. But if the people who know the curriculum, the one thing that they would do is guarantee that anybody else who wanted another curriculum would be allowed to do it. So the principles behind choice in education would be protected there. So that for me is a very important job. And traveling around, I was recently at Syracuse University and then Cal State this past week. And, nice turnouts, it was very good. And there's a lot of enthusiasm. What's great about the freedom philosophy is, in Texas, we expect you to be oriented toward liberty a little bit more than other states. Guess what? When you present the case for liberty and realize it's appealing to people who call themselves progressive, because the progressives in this society today are absolutely worthless for promoting progressivism. When it comes to foreign policy, they promote wars as much as anybody. And they violate, they violate civil liberties like everybody else. They're not out fighting, NSA. You take somebody like Dianne Feinstein, when the story broke about NSA spying, oh boy, we got to take care of them. So she says, I'm going to have a reform bill. She writes up this reform bill. It passes overwhelmingly in her committee. And somebody then read the bill. It turned out it was an absolutely disaster. What she did was she codified and made everything that NSA was doing legal under the law. So that was set aside. But she loves NSA. She loves German warfare. Right now, she doesn't like the CIA as much as she used to. That's what the government needs more of. They need more of the stuff on them.
Yeah.
Governments are not supposed to be secret.
Yeah.
People's privacy is supposed to be upside down. Our privacy is essentially gone, and the government's secrecy is still loud and strong. But it'll depend on you. What you do as a generation, as a people, it works. Just like I said, when there was enough education at the local level, all of a sudden we have educated and sent a message to a lot of people, who knows how many, enough to get the attention and have a bill passed on the House floor that there's something wrong with the Fed. And just like when the time came when Obama said, well, okay, we got to have another war, the weapons guys need more weapons, so we better start bombing Syria. Guess what? The message got out there. I'd already been in there. It was fortunate for the information to get out that, guess what? All our efforts in Syria to overthrow Assad, we aligned ourselves with Al-Qaeda. Oh my goodness, that's not good. We better not do that. And then it broke out, and then all of a sudden there was a false flag. They said Assad poisoned his own people, like they said about Saddam Hussein, which was a lie, and helped promote that war. So that lie came out thanks to Seymour Hersh. He showed that Turkey was involved in it, and the rebels were doing it. So the president actually realized this. He said, well, maybe I better let the Congress help me make this decision. And it was so overwhelming they didn't even vote on it. Because the people spoke out. Besides, it was at that time then that another good thing happened. They started talking to Iran. And this is magnificent. Does that mean the Iranians are magnificent people and great things will come of it? No. But I think that we have been beating up and saying it's all their fault they won't talk. We always say, yes, we'll have negotiations and talk, as long as they agree to everything we want before we start talking. But we're at least talking to them. But that is public pressure. Public pressure is very important. Now, I emphasize the important need of anywhere from 5 to 10%, because that's what you need in leadership to change a country. You need an irate minority keen on changing the minds of men and starting this brush fire. And it's key that you be one of those leaders to stir people up to do the right thing. So, but then again, I'm just talking about the majority of American people saying, hey, wait. What's the combination? You have to have leadership. Right now, the 3 to 5% of the people who run your TVs, the people who are in government, the people who do the movies, and it's all biased against what you believe in. But you have, the time and place is just so great. Because historically, I think in terms of centuries, it's a better time than ever to prove the case that totalitarianism and authoritarianism is a dismal failure, no matter what time you have. And you should never say, well, maybe you should go back to the divine right of kings and everybody will be okay, you know. But no, whether it's pure socialism, communism, Keynesianism, and bureaucracies running our lives, they've all failed. And I think that what we all need to do is realize that failure and realize that the freedom ideas have progressed. Monetary policy ideas have progressed. The response, self-reliance, and responsibility for the individual, those ideas have progressed where before we say automatically, oh, we have to have the government take care of us. And the other nice thing that's going on today, it's not just a few people in the United States, it's not a few people in the Republican Party, it's a lot of people around the world, believe me. I have heard from them, I get a lot of invitations around the world, and I think this is really fantastic on what's happening. So the ground is being set. Does that mean it's going to be smooth sailing? No. It's going to mean though, that the opportunity there, because you have this wonderful tool, the internet. And that is why I'm so emphatic about keeping the internet, keeping the government's hands off the internet as best as possible. And I hope and pray and assume that those computer people will know how to get around the government. Yeah. The freedom 100 years ago or so, for some reason, got off track from what the founders thought freedom was. Freedom was a unit. It was your personal life. You have a natural right, a God-given right to your life. You have a God-given right to keep what you honor. And your personal, social life and religious life is your own. And the founders were emphatic about no entangling alliances, don't get involved in these internal disputes within the internal affairs of other nations. And yet, you know, by the time we, in 1913, 1914, you know, when we got the Fed and the IRS and changed our foreign policy and had the 17th Amendment, all of them big changes have occurred. And the last 100 years have been very bad. There was, you know, I see long-term history from the time of the Magna Carta in 1215 and gradual improvements in the understanding of liberty. For the last 100 years, and of course the founders improved on it too, and wrote a pretty good document that hasn't been followed. But I think we're ready for another. I think we're ready for another step forward, in spite of the slippage of the last 100 years. And that's what your job is.
Yeah.
Make sure. Make sure people get to hear this message, because there will be rough times, and we are now climaxing the end of our system. I've got to claim the most wonderful political event in my lifetime was the collapse of the Soviet system. The proof of communism that did not work, and all of a sudden, 12 or 13 of their so-called satellite countries all seceded. I mean, that's what we want. We want people to have an argument that they can have always, that you can have self-determination, no matter what size, and the smaller the unit, the better. So the collapse of the Soviet system, because I remember the Cold War rather well, even having been drafted, even during the Cuban crisis and then the Vietnam War was going on. Those were terrible years, and we didn't have to fight them. You know, there was no reason to have a nuclear exchange. So this was fantastic. The ideas, their ideas failed. You know, the Soviet system failed. Mises predicted years and years before that. He said socialism can't work, and it did. I tell you what, Keynesianism doesn't work either. And Nixon made a profound statement in 1971 when he closed the gold window. He said, "We're all Keynesians now." And he was absolutely right. All the Republicans and all the Democrats were Keynesian, and about 99% still are. So if you have studied the economics or plan to study it and conclude that Keynesianism is failing and you can't have, you know, a Paul Krugman who gets top billing in every newspaper, New York Times, and said, you know what, the only reason we're having trouble is we don't spend enough money, our debt isn't big enough, and we don't have enough regulation, we don't print enough money. And you still see it as credible. So, if you come to this conclusion and realize it, just look at the financial news. It is really shaky. The end stages of the destruction of a currency comes quickly. We've been slipping this way. We take the dollar, we're making 13, we have 2 cents left of it. This 2-cent dollar is still the dollar. It's still being used, but less so all the time, less so around the world. And this squabble we're having unnecessarily with Russia, you know, us pretense that we can badger Russia around and put on sanctions, that's not going to work. And Russia's talking to China and India. They have a lot of money in the bank and they're buying the gold. And once the ship is away from the dollar, and it's already started, prices are going up right now. In the last few weeks, you can see prices going up. And the government's always lied about that anyway. Everybody's going to know about that. And the prices are going to go up and interest rates are going up. Right now, the United States government spends 27% of the income tax on the interest on the national debt. Just think about that. Now, they'll argue about that because they don't count the interest they pay on Social Security. You know, if that's a sound system, you're supposed to count that. But it's 17% without the interest that we put over on Social Security. But even 17% is huge for a nation to be drained that much. And that's when they keep interest rates at 1%. So you can see what's happening as they reject the dollar, interest rates are going up, prices are going to go up, and I think the end will come quickly. That's why we have to be prepared and getting the more the merrier. Understand your big job is do your best to understand it. The fact that you're here, I think, is delightful because you made my day. I've been having fun here today.
Hey, thank you!
Despite of all that, pretty much I'm an optimist, mainly because I see what's happening in history. I see the opportunities like never before, and I see the opportunities when I visit with people like you and I go to the campuses. And it was very early on in the OA campaign that I was astounded to find out there was a lot of education going on out there. I was at the University of Michigan after a debate, and there was a large crowd. We were outdoors, and it couldn't have been the majority, but the leaders were out there shouting about ending the Fed and burning Federal Reserve notes. So the message is out there now more so than ever before, and believe me, Yellen will probably do the Federal Reserve in a lot more than I would ever be able to do, because they're going to lose credibility. But the only thing that deserves credibility are the principles of liberty, and if we know and understand where our liberties come from, that'll be delightful. Because they didn't come from a government. They came from our Creator. They come to us in a natural fashion, and they put a lot of responsibility. The job will be easy for one reason: freedom is popular. Thank you very much.